By Sri Lanka's best internet package for online learning and online working with many amazing offers. Call 1212 for more information. Sri Lanka Telecom.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, 22 Parliament. 20th Amendment draft bill to be tabled in Parliament tomorrow. Opposition says court action will be sought. Kandy tragedy. 5-member police team appointed to investigate approval process of the Boobalikada construction collapse, which claimed the lives of 3. More revelations. Former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando blames ex-SIS Chief Nilantha Jayawardena for failing to prevent Easter attacks. Says Jayawardena and the President shared a bond beyond a father-son relationship. Filing charges. Bribery Commission files indictments against former Minister Ravi Karunanayake and owner of PTL Arjun Aloysius. All this and much more coming up on this Monday, the 21st of September 2020.
නව සන්ලයිට් සකුරා දැන් දිකුකල් පවතින සකුරා මල් සුවඳින්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando. Moving on to your top stories for tonight. Traffic lane rule system, including the bus priority lane, was strictly enforced today. Starting today, motorists are expected to adhere to the new traffic lane rule, which will be implemented from 6 to 9 a.m. and from 4 to 7 p.m. Police say first-time violators will not be fined. Instead, they are required to attend an awareness program. Repeat violators, in the meantime, will be charged with spot fines, failing which legal action is to be taken. The traffic lane law, including the bus priority lane rule, which was introduced to serve as a solution to heavy traffic congestion in Colombo and its suburbs, was rehearsed throughout last week, allowing motorists to get accustomed to the new rules. Effective today, the traffic lane system is strictly in effect from 6 to 9 a.m. and from 4 to 7 p.m., targeting the Baseline Road, High Level Road, Call Road and Sri Jayawardhanapura Road. Accordingly, on a 2-lane road, buses, 3-wheelers and motorbikes are instructed to stick to the left lane, while other vehicles will be driven on the right side. On a 3-lane road, the left lane is reserved for buses, 3-wheelers and motorbikes, while the middle lane is reserved for the other vehicles. 3-wheelers and motorbikes can also occupy the third or the right lane of the road in such circumstance. In the event of a 4-lane road, buses are instructed to stick to the left lane, while the second lane from the left is designated for 3-wheelers and motorcycles. Both lanes on the right are reserved for other vehicles. However, motorists will not be immediately fined for violating the rules. Instead, they will be made to attend an awareness program conducted by the police. Repeat violators, however, will be given spot fines, failing which legal action will be taken against them.
හොඳයි ට්‍රැෆික් එකට පොඩ්ඩක් අඩුයි නේ
නීතිය හොඳයි ට්‍රැෆික් එක තමයි වැඩි
මන්ත්‍රීත් නීතිය කොහොමද හොඳයිද ඔයගලන්ට
හොඳටම තියෙනවා මේව තමයි වෙන්න ඕන දිගට
විශේෂයෙන්ම මෙම මෙහෙයුම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන මාර්ග හතරෙම ශ්‍රී ලංකා ගුවන් හමුදාවේ සහයතුව ඒ ඩෝන කැමරා අංශය සහ ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොලිසියේ අපරාධ වාර්තා කොට්ටාසේ වීඩියෝ දර්ශන කණ්ඩායම් සහ ඡායාරූප කණ්ඩායම් නිලධාරීන් සමීප ආවේශන කොට්ටාසේ CCTV සවිකරන ලද වාහන අපි මේ මාර්ග හතර යොදවලා මේ වැරදි කරන රියදුරන් කවුරුන්ද කියලා අපි සොයා බලනවා. එම වාහනේ ලියාපදිංචි අයිතිකරු කවුද කියලා සොයා බලලා රියදුරන් අපි මේ සතියන්තයේදී ඔවුන්ව ස්ථානයට කැඳවා ආවාද කිරීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
සෑම කෙනෙක්ම මේක ස්වයංව අවබෝධ කරගත්තොත් පොලිසියට මේ නඩු පැවරීමක් හෝ දඩ මුදල් පැනවීමකින් තොරව ඉතාම ඉක්මනින්ම මාර්ගයේ විනය ඇති කරගත හැකියි.
Enjoy a very smooth shave with the Big Easy 2 razor. Big Easy 2.
The Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption filed indictments against former Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake and owner of Perpetual Treasuries Limited Arjun Aloysius today. The former finance minister is charged under the Bribery Act for obtaining an apartment on lease from a private company during his time in office, while Arjun Aloysius is charged under the Bribery Act for aiding and abetting the process.
The Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption filed indictments against former Minister of Finance Ravi Karunanayake and owner of Perpetual Treasuries Limited Arjun Aloysius at the Colombo High Court today. Karunanayake is charged under Section 19C of the Bribery Act for obtaining an apartment on lease at the Monash housing complex, while he was the Minister of Finance from the 12th of February until the 30th of September 2016. The apartment had been acquired under the Walt & Rowe Associates Private Limited, where Arjun Aloysius had maintained a position as director. Allegedly, Aloysius had paid a sum of $11.68 million through checks of Walt & Rowe Associates Private Limited and the company Perpetual Capital for the apartment. Arjun Aloysius, the second accused in the case, has also been indicted under Section 19C of the Bribery Act for aiding and abetting the process. Accordingly, the total number of indictments filed against the two defendants are 6.
Two accomplices of criminal gang member Angulane Roha were apprehended by police today, after the authorities were tipped off about a planned murder. Just as it has been over the last weeks, more suspects with drugs in their possession were also caught in the net of the police during various operations conducted island-wide. This is the latest on Sri Lanka's war on drugs and the underworld.
The Fort Police arrested the spouse of organised criminal gang member Blue Mandal Sanjeeva, named Abhenayaka Geethanjali, alias Geeta, today from Senamulla in Colombo 15. Police seized 26.8 grams of heroin and a sum of 129,000 rupees in cash from her possession. Furthermore, her son was also apprehended along with a friend of his, with 3.5 grams of heroin in their possession. Meanwhile, two accomplices of criminal gang member Angulane Roha was arrested from the area of Moravatta in Kandana today following a tip-off which alerted the authorities over a planned murder. A T-56 assault rifle and 13 rounds of ammunition were also seized from the possession of the suspects. In a separate development, the Jayala police arrested Anjali Dilhani, alias Bantake Kodunona, yesterday with 5.18 grams of heroin in her possession. It was also revealed that the 35-year-old suspect has a previous conviction by the High Court for drug racketeering. The suspect was ordered to be detained subsequent to being produced before the Valisara Magistrates Court. Elsewhere in Nulahitiwala, a suspect was arrested by the Crime Investigation Unit of Biyagama with 3.1 grams of heroin and 15 grams of crystal methamphetamine, commonly known as ice, in her possession. Furthermore, two suspects were arrested from her house whilst using ice, with 2.1 grams of heroin also found in their possession. In the meantime, a 47-year-old suspect was arrested with 150 grams of Kerala cannabis and 2 grams of heroin in his possession during a search operation conducted last evening in the area of Meegoda. Meanwhile, two suspects were arrested by the Kottava police with 3.5 grams of heroin in their possession. The police, during their interrogations, uncovered that they also had been stealing three-wheelers. Accordingly, the police discovered 5 stolen three-wheelers and several three-wheeler batteries from the areas of Homagama, Boralasgama, Kottava and Padukka. In a separate development, the Kilinochchi police seized 77.38 kilograms of Kerala cannabis hidden inside a boat off the Serikkan beach after being tipped off. Investigations are underway to arrest the suspects. In the meantime, the Galevala police arrested 2 suspects engaged in dealing Kerala cannabis and ice last night, with 4 grams of Kerala cannabis and 3.5 grams of ice in their possession. Police also seized a motor vehicle and a sum of 250,000 rupees in cash from the suspects.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
In one of our headline stories, as 14 days have elapsed since the draft of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was gazetted, it will be presented to Parliament tomorrow. In the meantime, the Samagi Jana Balavega appointed an 11-member committee to discuss the steps that are to be taken by the opposition regarding the 20th Amendment.
The draft 20th Amendment to the Constitution Bill, which received Cabinet approval on the 2nd of this month, was gazetted on the following day. However, due to the opposition and criticism put forth by members from within the ruling party and others, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa took measures to set up a committee to study the amendment and compile a report on changes that are necessary to the already formulated 20th Amendment draft. However, despite proposals that were presented in the committee's concluding report on the necessary amendments to the draft bill, the President and the Cabinet decided to present the 20th Amendment draft bill in its original form. Accordingly, as 14 days have elapsed since the 20th Amendment draft was gazetted, the draft bill of the amendment to the Constitution will be presented in Parliament tomorrow. Any citizen is able to challenge the draft bill in court within 7 days of it being presented to the Parliament. As a result, if any party challenges the draft of the 20th Amendment within this period, it is customary for the Supreme Court to present its verdict within 21 days from the date the petition was filed. Meanwhile, any amendments to the 20th draft bill will be included at committee stage after the vote on the second reading and before seeking a 2/3 majority following the third reading. Finally, once the Speaker signs the draft bill of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution, it will become constitutional law. In the meantime, the Samagi Janabalawege has appointed an 11-member committee to discuss steps to be taken by the opposition over the 20th Amendment, which is to be presented in Parliament tomorrow.
Former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando holds former Director of State Intelligence Service Senior DIG Nilantha Jayawardena responsible over the failure to prevent the Easter Sunday terror attacks of last year, which claimed the lives of over 250 people, despite there being forewarnings of an attack. Fernando, in his verdict as he was put on the spot during his testimony before the Presidential Commission probing the attacks. What's more, Fernando also touched on the relationship which existed between former President Maithripala Sirisena and the former SIS chief, saying the bond they saved was beyond a father-son relationship. This, he said, he felt powerless. Thus, he said, rather, he felt powerless in making any influences.
Former Secretary of Defence Hemasiri Fernando testified before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday terror attacks for the fifth day today. The attorney representing the former Defence Secretary drew the Commission's attention to a communiqué issued by the former President's media unit yesterday regarding his client who was giving evidence before the Commission. He said that his client had been accused of malicious lying before the Commission during his appearances these days via a letter issued by the private secretary to the former President. The attorney representing the former Defence Secretary told the Commission that by accusing a witness who is already giving evidence before it, an ongoing judicial process has been criticised by an outside party and therefore called for action against contempt of court. The Commission then sought the views of the attorney representing former President Maithripala Sirisena on the matter. The attorney representing the former President stated that he was not aware of such a media communique and that his client has not instructed him on the matter. He requested permission to make submissions before the Commission tomorrow with regard to the matter while requesting a copy of the relevant media communique. After considering the facts, the Presidential Commission ordered the former President's attorney to make submissions pertaining to the matter before the Commission tomorrow. The former Defence Secretary then began giving evidence, during which the state's Additional Solicitor General asked the witness whether the State Intelligence Service reported Zahran Hashim's proliferation of extremism via social media to him. In response, Hemasiri Fernando said that although the State Intelligence Service reported that Zahran Hashim was spreading extremism on social media, it was not analytical intelligence. The Commission then asked the witness that isn't it intelligence information that Director of State Intelligence Service should provide him with. The former Secretary of Defence responded saying, quote, "Yes, they are only supposed to provide me with analytical intelligence, but most of the information sent to me were just reports. It's useless to just send letters. It's the duty of a postmaster. The State Intelligence Service is supposed to submit intelligence information and make recommendations regarding that information," unquote. The Commission then asked the witness as to who should be blamed for not preventing the attack. Responding to the question, Fernando said, quote, "Nilantha Jayawardena, the former director of the State Intelligence Service, is culpable for failing to provide proper intelligence and for not properly informing the responsible officials, thus failing to prevent the attack," unquote. Afterwards, the Additional Solicitor General asked the witness whether the Director of State Intelligence informed him on the 20th of April that there may be an attack on or before the 21st of April. Former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando responded, quote, "Yes, I was sent a message via WhatsApp. At my age, I do not go through WhatsApp and Facebook messages. Nilantha called me and said he sent a message via WhatsApp and looked at the message afterwards. Had that piece of information been considered so important, Nilantha could have sent it through a messenger without texting me via WhatsApp, because the distance between our residences is about 2 kilometers. Nilantha called me and asked me to check my WhatsApp messages, which I did. Then I asked Nilantha as to what I am supposed to do, to which he replied that he conveyed the matter to the IGP and asked me to speak to the IGP. Then I called the IGP and asked him whether Nilantha had sent him a message. He replied yes, and told me that he is speaking to his subordinates about it. IGP Pujit Jayasundara told me that this is all he could do at the last minute. Former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando went on to say, quote, "I did my job as the Secretary of Defence. The IGP did his job too. It was very difficult to stop an explosion after a suicide bomber had planted a bomb. Zahran should have been arrested an year ago. The Terrorist Investigation Division was following Zahran, but it was stopped. The IGP will say more on this when he testifies. It is not my job to catch Zahran, and I cannot advise the Director of State Intelligence on intelligence information. Only the President can advise him directly." Former President Maithripala Sirisena and the former Director of State Intelligence Service had a bond that went beyond a father-son relationship. "I had no ability to influence that connection," unquote.
We'll return after this short commercial break. Stay tuned. Welcome back in your business news. Sri Lankan exporters who had difficulty in exporting local cinnamon in bark form to Brazil are now able to export the product by furnishing the necessary phytosanitary certificate issued by the National Plant Quarantine Service Office in Sri Lanka. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the Sri Lanka Embassy in Brazil had recently finalized certification for the export of Sri Lankan cinnamon in bark form to the Brazilian market. As per the Brazilian Customs clarification and plant health requirements, cinnamon in bark form is listed under wood, requiring a certificate process for Sri Lankan cinnamon in order to facilitate entry to the Brazilian market. In a statement, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said cinnamon has a promising market opportunity in Brazil since the product is popular in Brazilian cuisine, beverages and confection. Cinnamon imports to Brazil was valued at $7.74 million in 2019. Sri Lanka had only represented a very small amount in 2015, but no record of direct exports thereafter. Indonesia supplies nearly 75% of total cinnamon imports to Brazil. The Foreign Ministry further said Sri Lankan cinnamon exporters can claim 5% duty preference under the GSTP agreement from Brazil. Sri Lankan stocks closed 0.76% higher today. The all-share price index closed 43.73 points, up at 5,764.40. The more liquid S&P SL20 index closed 0.05% or 1.22 points down at 2,511.18. The market turnover was 3.5 billion rupees, while 124 stocks gained and 65 fell. Here's a brief report on today's market performance.
Today we saw the market rallying for the 10th consecutive day as the market continued its upsurge in the bull run. So we are having yet another Super September similar to previous number of years, and the rally is continuing at a sizable pace. We are seeing significant amount of retail activity in the market, so today's turnover levels also exceeded the 3 billion mark, touching 3.5 billion rupees. However, the foreigners continued to be on the selling side, and we saw today the month to date for net foreign selling surpassing the 5 billion mark. In terms of market activity, we saw again strong buying interest in the overall market, especially towards the last 2 hours of trading. And in addition to retail, we saw the institutional and high net worth participation also present.
Sri Lanka rupee ended weaker at 185 rupees and 52.65 cents against the US dollar today, while bond yields remained unchanged. However, the rupee closed at 185 rupees and 42.55 cents to the greenback last Monday. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day today. Wall Street's main indexes hit their lowest in nearly 7 weeks today as concerns about fresh coronavirus-driven lockdowns and the inability of Congress to agree on more fiscal stimulus raised fears about another hit to the domestic economy. All the major S&P indexes were down, with energy leading declines as oil prices slid on the possible return of Libyan production and rising coronavirus cases. Wall Street's main indexes have tumbled in the past 3 weeks as investors dumped heavyweight technology-related stocks following a stunning rally that returned the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq to record highs. Another round of business restrictions will threaten a nascent recovery in the wider economy and add further pressure on equity markets, analysts said. The first round of lockdowns in March had led the S&P 500 SPX to suffer its worst monthly decline since the global financial crisis. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Good night.